to talk a little bit about my story and how I moved from St. Louis to Atlanta, and how my experience of building my village here in Atlanta is a lot similar to how I built my business online when no one knew me. This story literally all came about because I am co-working with my mastermind sister, Diamond, and I was telling her, a little bit about me moving and how I really wanted to bridge the gap between moving from one city to another and building your business online when literally no one knows you is kind of the same. And so Diamond is an expert storyteller and she helped me put the pieces together. So now here we are. So if you don't know, my name is Brianca and I am a launch strategist. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, but I am from St. Louis, Missouri. So I actually moved to Atlanta in 2018 to work as a digital director for the 2018 gubernatorial race to elect Stacey Abrams in Georgia. But when I moved down here, the thing that most people don't know is that I, in 2018, decided that I did not want to be in St. Louis anymore. I felt like I was suffocating. I felt like I had just kind of like grown beyond the container of St. Louis and I wanted something different. But I really didn't know what different was. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't really know how to obtain it. And I did not believe that I could get it while I was in St. Louis. So what I did was I packed up my apartment and I moved home to live in the basement of my mom's house. And I had not lived there since I was 17. But I packed up, I went back home. I went through a major depression. I was so sad. I was so depressed. I had literally did the thing that I said I would never do. When I had moved home initially, or when I had moved out from my mom's house initially, I always said that I wouldn't come back. Like I would go out into the world. I would make sure I was successful. I would do the things. And so to find myself in 2018 at like 24 years old, like back home in the basement was like the most stressful situation for me ever. But I went back, I applied to over 1,000 jobs. I'm not even kidding you, literally over 1,000 applications. Because I thought that I was going to Dallas. I was dead set. I was like, your girl is about to go to Dallas. I'm going to be in all the hookah bars. I'm going to be kicking it with my friends. Cause all of my friends were in Dallas and I didn't at the time, I knew nothing about Atlanta. And I was like, I'm not going to Atlanta. I hear they have, massive amounts of traffic and that's just not where I'm trying to be. I did not know anything about it, but I was very clear that I did not want to come here. And so I applied to over 1,000 jobs in Dallas. I got none of them. I mean, it was the season of the ultimate rejection. I applied to so many jobs. I got none of them. And I could not understand why. In hindsight, I realized it was because that ain't where I was supposed to be. And I did not consult with God about my plans. I just made a plan and thought that was going to be what it was. And it wasn't. But so I applied to all these jobs. I didn't get any of them. Randomly, a friend messaged me and she was like, hey, I know of someone who's hiring a digital director in Atlanta. Would you be interested? And at this point, I'm like, yes, I'll just do anything as long as I can get a job. So I applied to this job on like a Friday. I got interviewed on a Monday. On Wednesday, I found out that I got the job and they needed me down there the next week. In Atlanta, in a city I had never been, knew nothing about, nothing. I had to be there the very next week. And so I was like, shit, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? How am I going to make this work? And so I ended up writing on Facebook like, hey, do y'all know of any apartments in Atlanta? Like I need to be moving in rather quickly, etc. So there was like this long thread. Everyone started sharing apartments in Atlanta. I ended up picking one in Smyrna. I still live in this apartment complex to this day. But remind you, I got the job on a Wednesday. So that Friday, 2 days later, we drove down to Atlanta to look at this apartment. I signed the lease. I moved down to Atlanta the very next week and started work on Monday. I moved here on a Friday. I started work on Monday. Like, it was so quick that I didn't even have time to to think about whether or not it was the right decision or how I felt about it. I honestly just like let God lead me. But the whole reason that we're having this live today is because when I moved down here, I knew no one. I knew not a single person. And village community is a core value of mine. So I was just like, how did I get to a place where I know no one, where I have no village, I have no community, there's no one stopping at my house every week. The girls are not gathering for the kickbacks. I can't go smoke hookah with my friends. I'm literally just here in the apartment by myself. And I was like so stressed out. But the thing that I learned, or that I'm learning now, is like, in hindsight, this is how a lot of us feel when we're on Instagram. We're on Instagram, we're hanging out, but no one knows us as an expert. No one is checking for us. No one is coming to kick it in our DMs. No one is hanging out and kikiing in our comments. Like, they're not checking for us at all. And that's literally what I experienced when I moved down here. And so I wanted to talk about this because I think that the strategies that I used to build my village in Atlanta are very similar to the strategies that we use when we're building a village and building a community online. So the very first thing that I did when I got down here was I got very clear on who I wanted in my village. Like, for whatever reason, like when I moved down here, I was just like, oh, I can pick my friends, but I want to be around millionaires. Like, I want to be where the money resides. At the time, I didn't know money resides was a thing. But I imagine when I'm thinking about how I was operating in my brain at the time, that's what I was thinking to myself. So I just started getting very clear on what I wanted my community to look like. I had done so much growing and evolving over the year previous that I knew that my village had to look different. It had to look different in order to hold who I was trying to become and what I was growing into. And so I got very clear. Like, I knew that I wanted friends who they had to know every single last word to back that ass up. They had to love the Lord and go to church. And they had to have like either an entrepreneurial spirit or like a work hard ethic. Like, I really wanted someone who could understand when I told them like what I was trying to build, and that they could come into agreement with that for me. And I needed them to be able to pray over me and also, go have margaritas with me, when the case presented itself. I knew that I wanted a well-rounded friend. And so as I got clear on what that was, I started looking for them in the places where I would go. When I moved down here, I didn't know anyone. So I would go sit at Pappadeaux and literally sit at the bar. Like, every day after work, I would go. This is back when Pappadeaux had that seafood macaroni. And I would sit at the bar, and I would have a Grand Hennessy, macaroni, and lobster biscuit soup. And like, that is all I think that's all I ate for like 3 months. I would just go to the bar and eat this meal because I didn't know anyone, and I didn't want to just be sitting in the house by myself. And Pappadeaux was like 5 minutes from my house. So I worked 100 hours a week. So by the time I was done working, I didn't want to be anywhere that was far. So I would just go to Pappadeaux and like hang out at the bar. And while I didn't meet anyone at Pappadeaux, like I didn't meet any of my current friends at Pappadeaux, it did open me up to being receptive to my friends that I have now when I found them. But this is also a lot like what you have to do when you're looking for your ideal client. You have to be very clear about who they are, like, what do they like? What don't they like? Do they listen to podcasts? Do they read books? What authors are they following? How do they show up online? Because you want to make sure that like you all are in alignment, that you're in agreement, that your content speaks to them and that it is attractive to them, and that's basically what I did when I started working on or trying to work on how I would build my village. I just started thinking about like first step, like, who do I want to be a part of it? So when you're thinking about building your business online, you have to ask yourself, like, who do I want to be a part of this business? Like, what kind of clients do I want to serve? So that was the very first thing that I did. The second thing that I did was, not only did I get clear on who I wanted to who I wanted to be friends with, I got very clear on where they were. Where were they hanging out? So were they hanging out at bars? Were they hanging out in church? When I moved down here, I joined the gathering spot, maybe like a month later or 2 months later or something. And the gathering spot really like put me in the room with other Black women entrepreneurs who, were also like, let's go to church and let's go drink margaritas. Let's build a business. Let's also like go have fun. And that's where I was at the time. And that was the kind of community that I wanted to be around. And so once I knew more about where my potential, village or friends were hanging out, I started going to those places. I started going to events at the gathering spot. I just started showing up, when I would get invitations, or when people would slide in my DMs like, oh, like I hear that you're new to Atlanta. I'm here. Do you want to go hang out? I would go hang out, and if I hung out and it was a good fit, then I would keep hanging out. If I hung out and it wasn't a good fit, then I would stop hanging out. But, just doing that really helped me to cultivate, the friendship and the community and the village that I have now. And so when you're doing it for your ideal client because you're trying to build your business online, it's the same thing, right? Like you got to figure out where they are. Are they in Facebook groups? Are they in hashtags? Are they in the comments of your favorite influencer or your favorite business coach? Where are the people who you are most aligned with? Where are they hanging out? And then baby, you got to go to those places and you got to show up, And so that's what I did. And at first, like I was so worried. I'm like, or maybe I wasn't worried. Maybe I just thought I was worried. But I was like, dang, like, will they like me? Like, will they like me? If I show up and I'm like my big, bold self, will they enjoy my personality? Will we kiki? And one of the things I realized very early on is like the people who like me are gonna keep talking to me. Like they're gonna keep, texting me. They're gonna keep calling. They're gonna keep inviting me out. And those are the people, honestly, who I'm worried about. I'm really not worried about anyone who doesn't like me. Like, I don't care, sis. And it's the same thing like when you're building your business online and you're thinking about your ideal client. Like, you got to worry about the people who are showing up for you. You got to worry about the people who like your content, who are in the comments, who are in your DMs, who are sissing you and girl, you better show up. Like, you got to worry about those folks. We cannot be worried about anyone who does not like our comment. We cannot be worried about anyone who does not engage with us because they're not our ideal client, right? Like, who cares? But you got to show up for the people who are showing up for you. And, a lot of times when you're building your business online, or in my case, when I was building my village, sometimes I would be so worried about the people who I didn't engage with that I would overlook the people who magnetize themselves to me. And once I realized that was a problem, I just stopped caring. So, as you are building your business online, I know sometimes it's like frustrating or it sucks to have people who are not, really engaging with your content, or you feel like it's like a slow climb up, but you just got to keep showing up, which brings me to my third point, which was I remain consistent. I kept showing up for the people who I was attracted to. I kept showing up for the village that I wanted, for the community that I wanted. When they called me, I answered. When they sent me text messages, I replied. When they had things that were going on with them and when they needed my support, like I showed up for those friendships and for those relationships. And it's the same thing for you. When you're building your business online, like don't allow a few bad apples to stop you from being consistent. Don't allow a few bad apples to stop you from showing up. You got to keep showing up until you build momentum. A lot of times we undercount the value of momentum, but honestly, momentum is where the breakthrough happens. Like had I stopped showing up, I never would have learned about Impact Weekend. I never would have had my mastermind sisters. I never would have got coaching from Maya. I never would have, like all of these things that happened never would have happened had it not been for the fact that I was diligent about showing up, for the village and for the community that I saw and that I wanted and that I felt like I deserved. And so it's the same thing with you and your business. As you are building your business online, as you're seeking out your ideal client, as you're putting up your content, as you're finding them in hashtags or in Facebook groups, as you are doing all the things, then you have to make sure that you stay consistent, like buckle down and stay consistent to the vision that you have for your business. Do not be distracted by people who do not engage with your content. If you post a piece of content and it doesn't get engagement, but you know that it's a hit, baby, repost it. No one said that you can't share it twice. Like, that's not, a thing. So I really just wanted to take this live and, share that with y'all, because I think I do really believe that the roadmap that I use to build the village and the community that I have is also the same roadmap, honestly, that I use to build my business. And a lot of the steps are the exact same thing that I teach in the accelerator. They're the exact same strategies and principles, because a lot of times when we're launching, when we're getting in front of our ideal client and we're nurturing them into our offers or into our programs, into our services, the steps are the same. It's all about having a plan. It's about being strategic. It's about being aligned. It's about getting in front of the right people. And it's about staying committed and consistent to that plan until you see the result that you're looking for. And I know that sometimes just having a plan, having the steps to launch your offer and to get in front of your ideal client is really only the difference between being successful and not being successful, between having a village that you love and that you want and not having one. So I just say all that to say, this roadmap not only works in your life, it works in your business. And if this live resonated with you at all, click the link in my bio, apply for the accelerator, or shoot me a quick DM and let's talk about how we can work together. I look forward to having you in the program. Drop a comment and let me know how you like this live, or if you have any questions. And I will talk to y'all later. Bye.